That's too bad. So this mold, can you tell us a little bit about this mold?
Well, this,
It's heavy.
well, I don't know who made that mold,
Oh, okay.
but it's pretty primitive. But you see, from here, the original mold was probably from here up, because here's the room for the button that where they put the foot on, you know.
Oh, okay.
Stem where you see a little button down there and then the foot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Evidently, this was the original mold, and they wanted it longer, so they plugged it and welded that piece in there. Then they put that extension on it.
Okay.
See, yeah.
Mhm.
This mold doesn't have the cap on it, which there should be a cap here. It comes in there, comes up about that big an opening for the blowpipe. See, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not complete.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate because all those skills have been lost in this country.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's a
It's
shame.
too bad. Yeah, I imagine there used to be a lot of workers in the western
Oh
area
my!
that were
Well,
involved with the glass industry. It was
the original guys come. Most of them come from Europe. You know, like my mother's family. They all come over here. You know,
right.
and that's the way my father got here.
Right.
Yeah.
Same with most of the glass factories. Do you think they started out with
Yes,
people,
yeah,
skilled
yeah.
workers from
Yeah,
Europe?
and in most of the factories, you would find the big bosses.
Mm-hmm.
They were all skilled workers themselves, you know, but they had moved up the
Right.
ladder,
Yeah.
and they all bought stock in the factory, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But those old European guys were mostly the guys that run these factories here.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Hmm.
And then the locals would be trained to become
Yeah,
skilled
yeah.
workers.
They were the guys that would go from factory to factory. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the way the skills got passed around. And I tell you, some of those old, especially European guys, man, they could make anything. Yeah,
Mm.
and they're, of course, that's where we've gotten away from the apprenticeship programs in this country. But in the glass factories, there's an apprenticeship program,
Right.
and you were not a journeyman mold maker or glass maker. The problem with this country is we got away from the apprenticeship program. And of course, I was an apprentice pattern maker, and that's where I learned my trade. But in the glass industry, you couldn't be a journeyman glass worker until you made yourself a cane. And this was the proof of it. If you could make that, then you were a journeyman glass worker. So, and it does take some skill to do that, to stretch that glass. And look how neat and straight you got it. See this? But like I say, they went through all the different phases of making glass until he could actually. I mean, most of the time they were gathering boy and so on and so forth. You know,
Mm-hmm.
The guy that pre-shaped the glassware before it went in the mold. You know, and stuck it on the blowpipe. But finally, proof of his expertise was the fact that he could make this. And then he was a journeyman glass worker. Yeah. Then he could demand a bigger wage, you know.
Is that why when they had parades, they'd often carry their cane?
Yes.
Just because
Yes.
this was proof of
Oh,
their
yeah,
skill?
yeah. Well, back then, quite often they had parades in town, and Actually, here in town, there was a fairgrounds down south of Weston. Had great big grandstands and all this, and a racetrack and everything. And once a year, generally in November or August or somewhere along the line, they had what they called the glass exposition. And all the factories around here would put up a display.
Mhm.
And they're all together. It was a beautiful thing to have.
Mm,
And they would have a parade. And of course, all the new journeyman mold makers or glass makers would get in that parade with their cane, you know. Yeah,
Right.
sure.
Proud
You know.
as could be.
Yeah.
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 It was very
That's
neat.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So canes were probably never made to order. Like you'd never get an order in for
It was
canes.
not a
right?
production
We see
thing,
a lot
no.
of canes, but most
No.
of them then have been
No.
just made to show that they have
Just
acquired
to show
their
their skill. Yeah.
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 Okay.
The proof of it was right there in that cane, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Of course, that wasn't all they could do. Because
Of course not.
in their regular job, they were the guys that put the handles on the jug,
Mm-hmm.
the guys that set the feet, you know, and all this, and then the guys that pre-shaped that glass while it was first put on the blowpipe, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So
Each one had their
yeah,
own skill.
yeah. Okay.
Hmm.
I guess the least guy on that top would be the crack-off boy, but he had to be pretty skilled too, you know. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you're gonna break up
Yeah.
all the glass. Yeah.
Did the glass makers get the opportunity to make whimsy things, little things they wanted to take home just for themselves? Or-
Oh yes, they had that opportunity.
Yeah, I imagine a lot of that went on.
I
didn't it?
I have a friend, a very close friend, family friend, you might say. He's from Mexico. And I'm telling you, he is the best glass worker I ever saw.
Is that right?
He really
Hmm.
is.
Hmm.
He's around 50, 52 years old now. But
Still
I
young.
wish I had bought a piece of his. He makes a Christmas tree out of glass. Some of them are that tall, some of them are that tall. But he works for a glass factory up in Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
He used to work out here at the Louis Glass, but it shut down.
Yeah.
And he found this opportunity to work for a glass factory up here in Pennsylvania. And they specialize in just handwork.
Okay. Yeah.
Very few molds, you know.
Right.
It's all handwork.
Hot glass. Yeah.
And he has made. He comes up with different things he makes for himself. He just thinks about it. And one day he goes and makes it, you know. And he got to think
Wow.
about these Christmas trees, you know.
Can
And he's
imagine.
been making them for about 2 years now.
Is he selling them or just
Well,
basically for himself?
Of course, during the summer, that's all he does is make Christmas
Okay.
trees, getting ready for Christmas. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
The main
Very
factory's
exciting.
up in New Jersey. Yeah.
Yeah.
But boy, now I knew and was close friends with some of the old glass workers from Europe, you know, because my dad was
Mm-hmm.
part of them, you know. And
Right.
every Saturday night they'd get up here at High Henry's and have themselves a beer party, you know.
Yeah.
Dad would give me a porter, and I'd go to the movies, and he'd sit in with his friends up there. When the movie's over, I'd go up there, and they let me in that beer joint. I was just a little fella.
They used to back in those days.
Well, those old German
Not
guys, they'd buy
anymore,
me
but-
Cokes and everything, you know,
Yeah.
which is hard to come by at that time.
You mentioned the cane being the item that they made to prove their journeyman capability. What about paperweights? When did the major designs of paperweights come into the glass factories? as in
Well-
some cases as a production thing.
Paperweights started mostly in these little glass studios, where maybe it's one or two people went together and set up a little place back in their garage or somewhere like that, you know. And they made paperweights and things like that. Now, there were a couple of guys out here at the factory, at the Louis Glass especially. They were good at making paperweights. And they developed ways to get little figures in there, or, you know, and my Uncle John Pertz was also real good at making paperweights. Of course, that was way back when, you know. Yeah, I still got one or two of his at home. Yeah. But at the same time, they had to learn how to cool that thing, because it just made it and set it on the table, it'd bust. You know, cool too quick. It just burst and break into pieces. So they'd take a 5-gallon bucket, fill it partly full of sand, and make a paperweight, put it down in that sand and cover it up real quick. Let it cool down all by itself. But that's why there was not a production thing in the glass factory. You know, most of these little studio shops made paperweights. You know.